Hey guys, and welcome to 2.7. In 2.7, we're going to be dealing with inequalities. All right. And so when it comes to inequalities, you may be familiar with it, but you're dealing with less than or equal to, greater than or equal to. Okay. So when it comes to inequalities, you often also hear the terms interval notation, and you also are expected to graph the inequality or the interval. Okay. So we need to know what each of these mean. If I got a less than or greater than here, that means I'm going to have parentheses. So the parentheses have to deal with the interval. So if they ask for interval notation, I'm going to use parentheses anytime I see a less than or greater than. And if I'm graphing it, that means I'm going to have an open circle. Okay. And then if I'm if the inequality says greater than or equal to or less than or equal to, then I'm going to use brackets um, on my interval and my closed circle on my graph. Okay. And inequality can have one of each or both uh, at any time. And the parentheses means I'm approaching this number, but I never actually, that number is not a part of the solution. The equal or the bracket or the equal to means it is part of the solution and I can include it in my answer. Now, like I said, when it's less than or greater than, I use parentheses because I'm approaching and it's not actually included in the number itself is not included in the answer. Well, the same holds true for infinity. Infinity is a concept because anytime you think of a number, there's always a number bigger than that that you can find. And so anytime we're using negative infinity or positive infinity, we include a parentheses with it. Okay, so starting with number one, we're going to um, we're going to um, write the interval and we're going to graph it for all these. Okay, for the first five. So let's graph this first. So I'm going to take this, graph it. You can put 11 right here in the middle. If you get a blank graph, a blank number line like this, don't stress about where to put the number. All right, just put it somewhere. All right. Because of the less than, I'm going to do an open circle. And the great thing about the interval, if you write it left to right, is it tells you exactly where to shade. It's pointing in that direction. So it says less than. So I'm going to draw here. Okay, that means everything. 11 is the highest I can go, and it's going to decrease without bound from there. So when you write your interval, you always go from least to greatest. Well, that graph goes off the left to infinity. But if you're going to the left to the infinity, if you're going to infinity to the left, then that would be negative infinity. And then again, 11 is your highest point, so that's going to be parentheses, parentheses. The parentheses has to go on the negative because we're talking about infinity, and we never get there. Okay. Number two, we have 6. And because it's less than or equal to, I'm going to close the circle and I'm going to shade to the left. Okay. Now, similarly, I'm going to write my interval negative infinity to 6. But because of that closed circle, I'm going to put a bracket on 6 and I have to put a parentheses on infinity. All right. 3 should be pretty straightforward. I'm going to have two numbers on a number line. I'm going to shade in between because that's where x lives. So you get -3, you get 16, and x is going to be somewhere in between. But because of the different signs, I'm going to have an open circle on 3, a closed circle on 16, and now I shade in between. Okay. So again, it starts off kind of like an ordered pair, -3, comma 16, right? And then I have a bracket on 16 and a parentheses on 3. Okay. On 4, we have to do a little work before we get our interval or our inequality. So I'm gonna move this -8. So that's gonna be x is greater than or equal to 2. Right. So again, I plot it on a graph, right? And that's gonna be 2, close circle, shade to the right. Okay. And so that's gonna be 2 to infinity because it increases to the right without bound. And from the infinity gets a parentheses. In this case, the 2 gets a bracket because of that bar. Right. Uh, so you need common denominators, or you can multiply to get rid of this. So let's see, we could do, it's going to be 12. So if I did that, that's going to result in 12x. 3 goes in 12 4 times. 4 times 1 is 4, so -4. 4 goes in 12 3 times, so -3. Right, so I'm going to add 4. It's going to be 12, x greater than equal to 7. X is, I have to divide. So x is greater than equal to 7/12. Well, again, um, the number line doesn't have to get carried away. I just need to represent what's going on. 7/12. All right, it's greater than or equal to, so it's a closed circle, shade to the right. All right, and so that interval is going to be 7/12, comma, infinity. Right, infinity gets the bracket, or sorry, the parentheses, and the bracket goes on the 7/12. Now, I want to show you something over here. Let's take a look. So we're going to work the one that's here. And I also want to show you negative 4x greater than or equal to negative 12 and show you a subtle difference that happens. All right, so I'm going to divide here, and I'm going to get x is greater than or equal to negative 3. Okay, so that is one way of doing it. Now, if I divide by negative 4, that goes away. X is less than or equal to negative or positive 3. Now, notice that if the thing on the right, the number on the right is negative, and I divide by a positive, nothing changes. But if I divide by negative, the inequality flips. And that's because anytime, uh, anytime you by multiply or divide by a negative, you have to flip the inequality. You flip the inequality sign. Okay? So always remember that. It's subtle, but it does make a difference. And you need to be paying attention to that. Okay, moving on. Uh, Here, we're not going to worry about the graph and the interval so much anymore. We're just going to find the inequality. So we're going to take the 3, move it over by subtraction. This is going to be 2x is less than, uh, this is going to be 8. And I'm going to divide, so x is less than 4. Okay, I didn't divide it by negative, so my inequality doesn't change. All right, I'm going to move the 4 over here because I want my inequalities are special, and I want to read them left to right. Uh, so that's going to be plus 4x. So that's going to be 7x minus 8 greater than 4. I'm going to add the 8 to the other side. So that's 7x is greater than 12. And so when I divide, x is going to be greater than 7 over 12. Nope, 12 over 7. 12 over 7. Okay, now on number 9, notice I'm going to move the x, and that's going to leave me with 5 greater than 2. So there's nothing I'm going to plug in anymore, but you have to ask yourself, when is this true? When is x, or when is 5 greater than 2? Well, always. So when you see something like this, all right, this includes every number on the number line. So how do you write that? Well, you write it negative infinity to infinity. You can also just spell it out, all real numbers. Either one is correct. All right, you just have to pick one. Okay. Now, number 10, it says distance from 0 to x on a number line is less than 3. Well, first of all, what is distance from 0? Distance from 0 is absolute value. Right? Absolute value can't be negative because it's distance, and units of measurement can't be negative. Okay, so if I plug in a negative 3, I get positive 3. If I plug in 3, I get a positive 3. So because it says it's less than 3, that means I'm between negative 3 and 3. Okay, and I represent it by saying x, absolute value of x, because it says this from 0 to x, absolute value of x is less than 3. And so that's how I write it. Okay. Now, number 11, on 2 exams, you have 82 and a 92. The final is optional. It counts as one test grade. You decide to risk it and go for the A, which means you're going to have an average of greater than 90. Sorry, excuse me, greater than or equal to 90. So what do you need to get an A? Also, what do you need to keep a B? All right, so a couple things here. I'm going to say 82 plus 92. And because the final is optional, but it counts as a one test grade, I'm going to say some third grade. I'm going to take the average. Remember, the average is a string of numbers divided by the number in that string. So how many terms do you have? And that's what I'm going to divide by. All right, and I want an A, so greater than or equal to 90. Okay, well, 82 plus 92 is 174, and 3 times 90 is 270. So that's going to be 174 plus x greater than or equal to 270. And so that means to get an A, x has got to be greater than or equal to, because I'm going to move the 174 over, 270 minus 174. That's going to be a 96. So if I want an A, that's what I get. Well, I also want to know what I want to get a B. All right, a b would be greater than or equal to 80. Okay, so we have 82 plus 92 plus x. It's the same setup, but this time instead of greater than or equal to 90, I'm going to say greater than or equal to 80. All right, I already know this is going to be 174 plus x greater than or equal to 3 times 80 is 240. Okay, so 240 minus 174 is 66. So to keep it b, x must be greater than or equal to 66. So it's a simple problem, but it's got multiple parts. So make sure you answer. If you see a problem like this, make sure you answer completely and answer the question they give you. All right, last problem. Uh, a car can be rented for $65 a week, so that's a flat rate, plus a mileage fee of 10 cents a mile. How many miles can be driven if you have at most $220 to spend for the weekly transportation? Okay, well, the 10 cents, that's going to be next to my variable, because if I got 1 mile, it's 10 cents, 2 miles is 20 cents, 3 miles is 30 cents, so on and so forth. So I got 0.010 times x plus 65. 65 is non-negotiable, and I have at most $220, so I can't spend more than that. So that's going to be less than or equal to 20, because I can 220. I can spend 220, but I can't spend more than. So this is how I set it up, and then you solve. So this is going to be minus 65. So it's going to be 0 10 x less than or equal to 220 uh, divided by or minus 65. So 155. And you're going to divide by 0.10. Okay, so x is less than or equal to 155 divided by 0.10 is going to be 1550. So I can drive 1500 miles, 1550 miles for 200 for 220 bucks or less. Okay, so that's my answer. I hope you learned something in 2.7. And if you have questions, please come see me, ask questions, and I will see you in class.